ended up a captain of the Royal Navy, not yet a captain when he made his famous voyage to Australia in 1770s. Still a lieutenant, as it's pronounced in the Navy. Aware of that distinction? Lieutenant in the Navy, lieutenant in the Army. So the Navy is eccentric. He was still a lieutenant in 1769. Banks was a very much richer man than Cook. He came from a wealthy Lincolnshire landowning family, was very intelligent, brilliant, attractive. We know he was good in bed because he wrote about it all the time in his account of his adventures in Tahiti. So rich, brilliant, important. They're both intellectuals. They're both agnostics. They believe in the social utility of religion only. So Cook would say divine service according to the rites of the Anglican Church every Sunday morning on board the Endeavour, but he didn't believe a bit of it. Right? So they're agnostics. They were scientific. Cook, the professional navigator and sailor. Banks was a botanist. He was also very interested in natural history, and I guess we could almost call him one of the fathers of anthropology, because he's interested in the study of human beings. Linnaeus, who was the man who invented the Linnean system of classification of species. Swedish, right? All did that in biology at high school. Linnaeus was a friend of Banks, and after the Endeavour came back, Linnaeus suggested naming the new country they'd found Banksia, because he thought the role of Banks was so important. Now, as we all know, Banksia has just become a station down near Mortdale or Hurstville. But still we have Bankstown and Banksia and Botany Bay, and certainly the name has been commemorated in a lot of ways around here. The voyage of the Endeavour was partly funded by the Royal Society and partly by the Admiralty. Now, the Royal Society was not a group of people who had tea parties. It was a scientific society. It was called the Royal Society because it was established under the patronage of King Charles II, who wanted England to be a scientific power. That was 100 years before this voyage, so it had already been going quite a while. Charles II, interesting figure, openly Catholic King of England, of a mostly Protestant country, and he wanted to take the heat out of religion by getting people interested in science instead. He preferred them to be interested in science and art and culture, not to mention the pleasures of the bed, of which he was an addict himself. He thought it would be far more sensible if Englishmen were far less interested in religion and far more interested in science and culture and having a good time. Winning formula. So Charles II set up the Royal Society, and it was this society of scholars. And so scholars were involved, and also wealthy but learned members of the English community, like Joseph Banks, of which Joseph Banks is so fine an example. So the Royal Society was rich. It was funded by directly by the Crown and also by its members, and it sponsored the voyage of the Endeavour to Tahiti and Australia, which took 3 years from 1768 to 1771. In our tutorials next week, we'll be looking at what the Endeavour and its crew and its passengers did in Tahiti. And we know a lot about them because they were all so literate and so intelligent. And there were artists on board as well, so it's all been painted. We've got 3 different journals. We know more about what happened on board this ship than practically on board any other ship in the history of humanity, and certainly more than we know about what happens on P&O cruises. We know everything that happened on the Endeavour, pretty much. So we'll be looking at the Endeavour in Tahiti next week in tutorials. Today I'm looking at, after Tahiti, Cook circumnavigated New Zealand, established that it was 2 islands, and then came to Eastern Australia, which, so far as we know, had possibly only ever been charted by one Portuguese ship before, and the evidence for that is circumstantial. As everybody knows, in April 1770, the Endeavour entered Botany Bay, And when they arrived there, they had a simply wonderful time. I should explain why. First of all, the time of the year they arrived, it was April. Now, April is a very pleasant time of the year in Eastern Australia. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. The summer of 1769, 1770 had obviously been a nice wet one. So they arrived there all around Botany Bay. The weather was perfect, you know, it was 22 degrees, sunny, and it was very grassy. There were kangaroos and wombats and all sorts of other animals they'd never seen before, and all the wildflowers were in profusion. And so that for them it was a real playground. Right? They thought it was a wonderful place. They'd never been anywhere that was so exciting. All these new animals, never documented before, all these new plants, never documented before. So it was a real scientific playground. Daniel Solander, who was a Swede, was on board, and he'd been a student of Carl Linnaeus, the founder of modern botany. And that's why there are all these botanical names around that part of Sydney from that first visit. Now, they were also interested in the people they saw, the Aborigines. And in their attitude to the Aborigines, they were very much influenced by the ideas of the Enlightenment. And to prove this point, and this is my last point, I'm going to look at Cook's observations on the Aborigines in 1770, in April 1770. But before I read them, I'm going to... This is William Dampier on Aborigines in 1688. He sailed on the Dutch route and touched on the coast of Western Australia in 1688. He was English. He was an interesting fellow. He was part pirate and part journalist. So he made his money raiding enemy ships and grabbing their treasure and then writing about it and publishing it. And because he was a colourful writer, his books were immensely popular, so he made a lot of money out of publishing. So this is Dampier on the Aborigines of northwestern Western Australia. I think the first sentence says it all. The inhabitants of this country are the miserablest people in the world. Blah, blah, blah. They have no houses, skin garments, sheep, poultry and fruits of the earth, ostrich eggs, etc. Setting aside their human shape, they differ little from brutes. Their eyelids are always half closed to keep the flies out of their eyes. They have no sort of clothes but a piece of rind of a tree tied like a girdle about their waists and a handful of long grass, blah, blah, blah. They have no houses but lie in the open air without any covering, the earth being their bed and the heaven their canopy. I did not perceive that they did worship anything. It's a fairly negative account. Very negative account. Now compare this to Cook, who actually misquotes Dampier. Right? He's read Dampier, but he's working from memory, so he misquotes him. He says not the miserablest, but the most wretched. They may appear, this is Cook on the Aborigines, they may appear to some people, William Dampier, to be the most wretched people upon the earth. But in reality, they are far more happier than we Europeans, being wholly unacquainted, not only with the superfluous, but the necessary conveniences so much sought after in Europe. They are happy in not knowing the use of them. They live in a tranquillity which is not disturbed by the inequality of condition, no social inequality. The earth and the sea of their own accord furnishes them with all things necessary for life. They covet not, they are not jealous of. Magnificent houses, household stuff, etc. They live in a warm and fine climate and enjoy a very wholesome air, so that they seem to have very little need of clothing, although I must admit I do today. And this they seem to be fully sensible of, for many to whom we gave cloth, etc. too, left it carelessly upon the sea beach and in the woods as a thing they had no manner of use for. In short, they seem not to set value upon anything we gave them, nor would they ever part with anything of their own for one article we could offer them. This, in my opinion, argues that they think themselves provided with all the necessaries of life and that they have no superfluities. So there's James Cook, almost a hippie, almost saying, look, in having nothing they are so happy. That's Rousseau's Noble Savage, an idealistic view of the Aborigines. So you can see the great contrast in vision between early visitors to Australia and what they were looking for and what these men of science looked for in 1770. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this week. Enjoy your tutorials. You'll need to change it. You've got two options. You can move your lecture to Wednesday, or you can try and change it to Thursday and the other course.
She said to me that I can take a tutorial, actually, but they've only got two tutorials, and the week one is 3 to 5, but I've actually got the shoot for this 3 o'clock. I was wondering if I could take it to
2 o'clock.